in what was Sam Darnold's first career start. Joe Williams surges forward for 4-5. Tayshawn Smallwood with the tackle. But to think of where they were after that Utah game, USC sat at 1-3 before ripping off these 5 wins in a row. And they have the quarterback of the future in Darnold.
And one of the best wide receivers in the country in Juju Smith-Schuster. And they've got other options as well. Stephen Mitchell, Darius Rogers. There's a number of weapons on that USC offense that, I mean, look, the Washington secondary is as talented as it gets. Buda Baker, guys like that on the back end. But they're going to be tested. This will be a fun game to watch and see if USC can still keep their hopes alive in the Pac-12 South. They really need a win in order to be able to stay alive and then hope that things go well for them the rest of the season. And really, they're almost rooting for Colorado to get a win because they own that tiebreaker over Colorado. They don't owe it over Utah.
And in a scenario, if it happened, where there was a 3-way tie, it is funky to try and figure out which team goes. There's a flag down as Joe Williams breaks about 100 tackles and muscles his way for a first down.
Slippery like a bar of soap. I mean, I thought it was...
Offense number 72, 10-yard penalty, second down.
There you go, Garett Bolles once again. It's a tough position to be in when a running back then changes field and continues to keep fighting. That's not an excuse, but sometimes those guys kind of get stuck between a rock and a hard place when they're trying to position themselves. And the play's supposed to go one way, the running back comes back the other way. Now all of a sudden you kind of get extended and you leave yourself susceptible to be calling for a hold. But Garett Bolles is JUCO transfer out of Snow College. And Kyle Whittingham talked about him as being maybe the best left tackle in the country. And when you watch him, you can see he's definitely got the ability.
Run behind him again. This time Zack Moss on his first carry of the night. True freshman from Florida. Finally close to 100%. He's missed the last, he came back part-time duty last week, but had missed 3 games in a row prior to that.
He's part of that Hallandale High School contingent from Florida. Zack Moss, Damari Simpkins, and Tyler Huntley, all from Hallandale High School down there in South Florida. Some playmakers down there.
Dennis Erickson went down there and got him. The former head coach here at Arizona State, the guy that Todd Graham replaced, is now the running backs coach at Utah and still has those South Florida connections. Utah will use a timeout to avoid that delay. We're talking about that South Division race. Utah, if it wins out, will be the division champ. And there is a chance that if USC wins out, you get a little bit of chaos going on in the South.
Well, then it comes down to this matchup here, really, where Colorado takes on Utah. And depending on who wins that game, would then determine who would go. Because if Utah wins out, they go in, because even if it was a tie with USC, they still own that tiebreaker. And if Colorado won, it'd be a tie between Colorado and USC. But USC owns the tiebreaker over Colorado since they beat them earlier this year. So that is the scenario that the Pac-12 is in at this current moment. It's obviously assuming that all those teams win out until the end of the season, which clearly USC has their hands full with Washington. Although we saw number 4 team lose last week in Texas A&M. Maybe that's kind of like that number 17 spot in the rankings. Maybe all of a sudden whoever's number 4 keeps having a hard time getting traction staying there.
Talked a couple of times about Colorado. How about the job Mike McIntyre's done there in Boulder? And hitting the hole hard is Williams. Stays on his feet for another touchdown, putting a camper on a Utah win in Tempe.
It was as if he was shot out of a cannon. And the law of inertia here comes into effect. Those objects that are in motion are willing to want to stay in motion. And once Joe Williams gets going, he just runs through arm tackles in the secondary. And you're not stopping him with that sort of speed and momentum. With the end zone in sight, he's finding his way there. I mean, what a lift he's given this offense since he's come back.
In the first half, Brady, 6 carries for 26 yards. In the second half, carries for 155.
Just ridiculous when you think about the second half, but really the past few weeks, the way he's been able to run. And again, give credit to the big guys up front. He almost gets untouched a lot of times once he gets to the second level, but he's got the speed, he's got the balance and the ability to be able to run through arm tackles and make the big plays. And talked about that track speed before. It's really when it comes into play. He gets out in the open field and he is gone.